afternoon.
Hello, hello.
I'm Savannah.
I'm Alicia.
And this is Burden of Proof.
Welcome back,
Welcome
everybody.
back. We're going to late start recording today.
Yeah, we are.
We talked too much. I know
you guys always happens.
I know you guys are shocked.
It always happens when we take a week off.
Right.
We didn't record last weekend.
That's true.
We have to catch up. Well, Happy New Year almost.
Almost New Year.
The New Year's coming right
Right.
around the corner.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a New Year's kind of person.
I like New Year's, but I never get to do anything because my fiance is always working.
No, yeah.
So I don't really do much for New Year's.
Yeah, see, I like not doing much for New Year's.
I don't have any desire to like go to a party or anything, but I do feel kind of lackluster every year. I'm just like sitting at home like, oh, look, there it is.
See, but I like that because in my younger years, I did go out and party.
Yeah.
And it always fell flat, was disappointing. There was some sort of drama.
True.
Something would always happen that would make me go, this sucks. I should have stayed home. And so now I do. And I'm happy with it.
True.
It's totally okay. I've actually had the best New Year's like the past 2 or 3 years now that my kids are old enough to actually stay up and do stuff. So like the last 2 years, we stay up late and we play, what's that game? Dance Dance Revolution.
That is the best New Year's tradition.
So that's what we do now.
That's fun.
And my kids laugh at me because I know all the old dances.
I'm jealous. That's
and then
fun.
they teach me all the new dances.
That's great.
So you can come over and play Dance Dance Revolution.
I probably will now.
So yeah, I don't think we have any announcement. Oh, I do. I want to thank our listener, Deacon, requested months ago.
Yeah.
The Richard Huckle case. Deacon, thank you for your patience. I am working on it. I promise. That's a beast of a case. And it being a UK case, I just want to make sure that I find the right resources. I keep starting it and then I kind of run out of time and I need to have a case written. So then I pick something else. So I just wanted to say, if you're listening to this one, please know I am working on it. And I will cover it at some point.
We have had so many, and I love it, so many listener recommended cases these last few weeks. Like our list is getting so long and it's great.
I know. It's like starting to fill up our whole whiteboard.
Exactly. But I did have a weird feeling this week because I picked a case that's not on the recommended list. And I was like, oh, I feel like I'm disappointing somebody, but I wanted to cover this one. So, that's sometimes they're not going to be recommended. Most of the time, though, I feel like recently they have been.
Well, next time.
Right.
I hope to do the Richard Huckle case as my next case.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and shout out to Sarah, and I'm going to mispronounce your name. Give me just 1 minute. I'm gonna look at it so that I can sound it out and make sure that I'm not saying it wrong. We had emails this week that I wanted to.
Oh, yes.
Domini would be how I pronounce it.
I think so. Yeah, I was excited when I saw that.
That was so sweet. So thank you guys both for Sarah and Domini for emailing us in because that was great. I love that you're like, we don't have social media, but we want to contact you anyway. So do that if you want to. We're burdenofproofpod@gmail.com. Let us know what you like. We answer.
Yes. And we do have, like we said, a lengthy list of listener requests. So it might take us a while to get to yours.
Yes, but
we will try. We do try. There's been a few that I have to say no to just because it either doesn't fit the burden of proof sort of scheme, if you will. Yeah,
because we don't do unsolved cases. We're in cahoots.
We are in cahoots.
Because we can't do unsolved cases if they don't have a trial attached to them. That's kind of the line for us.
I mean, I will do it if it's, even if the person gets caught and makes a deal or whatever.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I don't necessarily, I try to steer clear of unsolved cases. I personally like doing lesser known cases. Mm-hmm. So I know, like, I've had a couple people ask me personally, like friends or acquaintances, ask, hey, you should do this. And it's like some huge famous. I'm like, everybody's done that. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not going to give you any new information on that case because it's been done to death. And so I try to.
I agree. I think that that's something that our listeners look for too, is that we have cases that you haven't heard of.
Yeah.
And that makes us fun. And I also like bringing attention to other victim stories, and it's time. So yes, please give us your recommendations or anything you want us to cover. We will eventually do it. It will just take us some time.
Yes. All right.
I don't even know what we're covering today.
It's not very New Year's Eve-y, but it took place on New Year's Eve.
Oh, and I'm sorry that the case that we put out before Christmas wasn't a Christmas case. It just kind of happened that way. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I should have done a Christmas one, and then I didn't.
Well, that's okay.
Well,
we'll forgive you.
Yeah.
Next time, we'll do Christmas. Next Christmas,
we'll do Christmas. It's just going to be me telling you a Christmas story.
That works. You can tell. Like, that just made me think. Did you know that there is a place somewhere in Florida, I want to say it's in Plant City, that is like a haunted house kind of setup, but it's Christmas themed? Did you know that?
No.
I just saw it on Instagram like a few days ago.
Stop the recording. We're driving to Plant City.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
It's like I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Sorry to bring something up and not have all the info, but yeah, just Google like haunted Christmas house or something and in Florida, and I'm sure you'll find it. So
is it like the Ghost of Christmas Past or something? I guess.
No, it's like straight up like Christmas characters, but they look gory.
Oh, I can't do that.
That kind of haunted house.
I'm scared of haunted houses.
Yeah. Not like a real haunted house. Like,
right.
I know. Yeah, I would have literally taken the time to call you or text you if it had been like, this house opens up for Christmas, but it's truly haunted.
That's different. I can handle real ghosts, but theater kids.
Yeah, jumping out at you.
Yeah, for some reason I can't. I don't know. I think it's generational. Yeah. Mom has a story.
I can handle it. I just don't always. Mostly it's not worth the money for me.
Fair.
I'm not going to lie.
Fair.
I'm like, I don't want to pay $30
for
some dude to
this isn't fun.
Jump out at me and accidentally hit me because he's like
depth perception. It's dark in there.
He's a teenage kid and isn't. Yeah.
He's like, my arms are longer than they used to be. I don't. They hurt. Growing pains. This is a tangent.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. So this case is a bit tricky. I did my best. I hope everybody can follow what I'm saying.
It wouldn't be an Alicia case if we weren't a little confused.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry. There's multiple criminals, if you will, to this crime.
Okay.
I'm going to go over what the main person is, Brandon Hutchinson. I'm going to give you his account of what happened.
Okay.
Okay. Then I will give you a little bit, kind of just like a very short summary of what Michael Salazar says happened. And then we will discuss what the court documents say happened.
Okay.
Because not everything lines up perfectly.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So in 2019, Brandon Hutchinson spoke out about his crimes on the show I Am a Killer.
Okay.
But as I said, there were multiple men involved. And of course, they each have their own version.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do my best to cover it. I do try to, make the transitions easy, but stop me if you have questions.
All right.
And if you listeners have questions afterwards, just visit us on Instagram or Facebook and we will do our best to answer. Brandon Hutchinson was born on December 16th, 1974 in Ventura, California. The middle of three boys, he struggled with behavioral issues his entire childhood, but it wasn't just because he had middle child syndrome. Brandon says he was sexually abused as a kid, and he believes it started around age 5. He recalls seeing a psychologist at a young age after he started acting out, but apparently it wasn't enough to, be a full intervention, because he began using drugs and alcohol at an early age as well to cope with everything. He admits his methamphetamine use grew heavy around age 15.
Wow. Okay.
Brandon then met a girl named Michelle while dealing drugs to one of her friends at a motel room, and they began an on-again, off-again relationship. They had 2 children together, but he says that the relationship was completely over by the time he was 18.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea of the rough life we're talking about. He then moved from California to Mount Vernon, Missouri, hoping to get clean and start over.
That's a big change, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think he had family in both places.
Okay.
So he moves there, but unfortunately he found himself in the same sort of trouble when he met his new cousin-in-law, Freddie Lopez. Freddie rented a property that included a house and an old car repair building, like a garage next door. And he told everyone that he was starting a detailing business. But according to Brandon, that was just a front. The truth was that Freddie was a marijuana dealer. He was transporting up to 50 and 60 pounds at a time from California to Missouri. So Brandon's...
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to picture that. That's a lot.
That's Betty's
yeah,
size.
That's the size
That's
of
my dog,
of her
doodle.
golden doodle. Do they also have a carrot in their mouth? Put a carrot on top of the weed?
Put a carrot on top of the weed.
Betty will, she does the displacement thing when she's really happy. She has this giant carrot toy. That's what I'm talking about.
I was going to say, it doesn't make sense to anybody.
No.
Yeah, she loves her giant carrot toy. And so she wiggles her butt around with it in her mouth.
Yeah.
And
It's
sometimes when
adorable.
she gets she bites it in just the right spot and she's super excited, she'll just repeatedly squeak it over and over and over again.
It's adorable. It's so cute.
So Brandon started working for Freddie and says that he was initially just trying to build up Freddie's clientele, but quickly started using drugs again himself.
Mm-hmm.
He then encouraged Freddie to take up methamphetamine dealing because it turned a larger profit than marijuana. So Freddie took a shot at it, and according to Brandon, the business really took off. Freddie then had his friend Michael Salazar come to Missouri to be his right-hand man, so to speak.
Okay.
Michael and Freddie were from the same gang in California, so Freddie really trusted him. And now that he was handling heavier stuff, it seemed necessary. And then on New Year's Eve of 1995, Freddie and his wife, who is Brandon's cousin,
Mm-hmm.
threw a party at the detail shop. Brandon says that that party was the first time he met brothers Brian and Ronald Yates.
The Yates
Brothers. He and the 2 brothers were playing dominoes when they began talking about Freddie and Michael. Brandon grew frustrated when they began using racial slurs, so he stepped out of the garage where he ran into Michael.
All right.
And he says that he told Michael what the brothers were saying, and Michael proceeded to enter the garage and open fire on the 2 men.
Oh, okay.
Only one of the bullets hit Ronald, and according to Brandon, Michael then grabbed a screwdriver and started stabbing Ronald. Brian was shot a couple of times, so he was down. Ronald was hit one time. It took a minute for him to fall, Brandon said. But then he claims that Michael grabbed a screwdriver and just started stabbing Ronald.
Okay.
Brandon ran to the house to tell Freddie what was happening. And then as they came back and they entered the garage, Ronald was attempting to escape out the back door, like by crawling. He couldn't walk. And Brandon claims that Freddie told him to go get him.
Oh gosh. Him. Okay. The pressure.
Yeah. So Brandon admits he grabbed Ronald, dragged him back to the middle of the garage, and kicked him. And he claims that he remembers somebody saying that they should call an ambulance but says that instead they didn't. They decided, no, we can't. And that Freddie then directed them to pull a car up, and instead of calling an ambulance, Michael and Brandon loaded the two men into the trunk of the car. Brandon was driving with Freddie in the passenger seat and Michael in the back seat. And despite being both shot and stabbed, according to Brandon, both Ronald and Brian were still alive and began making noise in the trunk.
Oh, gosh.
Freddie told Brandon to pull the car over, and Brandon says that Freddie said nothing more but handed him a .22 pistol. He claims he was worried about staying alive himself, and he took the action as a silent order to kill the two men.
Okay, that's what it seems like it is.
Brandon states that he opened the trunk, and without even hesitating, he grabbed each of them by the head and shot twice. Okay?
Okay.
Pretty straightforward. But as I said in the beginning, that is just his account in 2019. This happened in 1995.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
And he admits that he was high when it happened. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
Because I don't necessarily want to say that he is a liar completely. I just, there's just a lot to it. He said in his interview that he kept his mouth shut about what happened to keep himself and his family safe, implying that the people he had been associating with would not take it well if he was honest. He also admitted that he had never felt remorse for what he had done until the few years leading up to the interview. And it was watching a mother speak about the murder of her daughter on TV that made him feel the pain that Mrs. Yates must have felt when she lost her sons.
Okay. I think addiction definitely has a role to play in that, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Now we'll go back to the crime. Okay. And just hours after the murders happened, Deputy Sheriff Walter Mativier got a call from dispatch informing him there was a double homicide. Brandon, Freddie, and Michael did the bare minimum to cover up the crime. They literally just dumped the Yates brothers' bodies on the side of a dirt road within the same county that they lived.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No burial, no cover, not even a short distance off the road into the woods. They were driving, but remember, they started making noise in the trunk.
I know. I'm saying they didn't stop. They didn't leave the county. They didn't say
They didn't even make it out of the county. No. Just a dirt road. I think they were on a main road trying to drive away from the county, but when they stopped and he did that, they didn't then put him back in the trunk and then drive farther out. They just right there left them on the side of the road. There was some woods just a few feet away. They didn't even drag them off into the woods. They were literally half in the road. Yeah.
Lovely.
So Sheriff Mativier said he had never heard of anything like it happening in the county, and he definitely had never dealt with a double homicide before. The officers instantly knew it was an execution because both men had been shot in the eyes, but also in the back.
Okay.
In their backs. The detectives working the case believed it to be gang-related.
Right.
Mativier said they were only able to identify the bodies right away because sitting a few feet away on the ground were some dentures that were inscribed with the Department of Justice, inmate number, and Brian Yates' name. Sorry for that visual.
Yeah.
It did not take long for investigators to link the murders back to Freddie Lopez and his operation, though. And within 5 days, Brandon, Michael, and Freddie were all arrested. While awaiting trial, Brandon's ex and mother of his, at the time, 2 sons, moved to Missouri So they were on again, off again when they were younger, but she supported him. See, she had cut contact with him before he left for Missouri because of his drug addiction. But she says she always believed he was innocent of the murders and wanted to support him as well as allow him to see their sons. If you're like me, this may make some sense to you, but their next move may not.
Okay.
Like, that's fine. I understand.
Yeah.
If she's thinking, oh, well, he really was trying to get his life together and now he's been, accused of this crime. And the only way my sons are going to get to see their father is to be able to go visit him in prison.
Right.
Potentially. I could see, and obviously they probably didn't have the healthiest of relationships because he obviously had addiction issues. She obviously was hanging out with a lot of people that had issues since that's how they met. But the next move was a bit shocking for me. I'm not exactly sure when, but I'm pretty sure that they got married while he was in prison awaiting trial for these murders. And she says that she did so because she was convinced he was innocent and not going to be convicted and that he would get out.
That's a big leap.
Yeah. And he had never said, like, everything that I just went over of his story, that he never admitted that at the time.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. In fact, I'll discuss how she found out later because I was quite horrified. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Nevertheless, he was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and was the first of the 3 men to go on trial. Before we discuss the trial, though, let's go over what Michael Salazar claims happened that New Year's Eve and the actions we know that Freddie Lopez took once he was arrested. Michael admits that he initially shot the Yates brothers. Yates brothers, that's like saying that they're the brothers. Yates brothers.
The brothers of the Yates.
But says that everything after that is hazy. Michael doesn't really remember whether it was Brandon or Freddie making the decisions the rest of the night, but he claims that every action he took was by their lead, and he really wasn't thinking at all. He also was
a bit of a cop out, but okay.
Yeah, especially since he was like the only one that was supposedly sober.
Right, yeah.
He wasn't using the drugs.
So, did anybody fact check that?
But here's the thing. Brandon now says, I mean, I already discussed what Brandon says happened. So that part is true that Michael shot them first but he technically did not kill them. So there is some agreement in that. And we'll talk about kind of everyone's relationship with Freddie because that plays a big part.
Oh gosh.
Of this.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael was also charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder under the legal principle of common purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're not familiar, it was a little difficult to find a good source for me on that because a lot of what I found was actually from other countries, and I was trying to specifically find, like, what does it mean in Missouri? But basically, it's what it sounds like. Brandon and Michael worked together to commit this crime. Therefore, Michael was charged with the same thing, despite not being the one who actually delivered the fatal shot.
Right. Like, the intention was there for both of you. So
yeah.
That's what matters in this case.
But Michael claims that he didn't have a common purpose because he says his thought process in taking the Yates brothers out to the country road was to leave them there and that someone would come along and find them and help them.
But you shot them in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. As long as we're on the same page.
Now, things looked a little different for Freddie Lopez. Because unlike Brandon and Michael, Freddie did not wait 24 years to talk. No.
Freddie said, pass me the mic.
There was no evidence that Freddie was present in the garage during the initial shooting, nor was there really any definitive evidence as to his role in the aftermath. But what prosecutors did have was a statement from Freddie that they did not have from Brandon or Michael. So he made a deal with the prosecution to testify at both of their trials in exchange for a lesser charge of second-degree murder.
Okay.
Now, I want to discuss what Brandon and Michael's appeal records state happened that New Year's Eve. Okay. I cross-referenced them, and for the most part, though they're phrased differently, and some, they have like slightly different details, but generally speaking, same thing happened.
Same gist, yeah.
But I pulled some details from each of them. So, according to the statement of facts, Ronald and Brian Yates arrived to Freddie and Carrie Lopez's party just after midnight looking for their brother Tim. Tim had already left the party, but Freddie invited the brothers to stay and have a few beers. And apparently more.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, just some beers, or are they having some more fun?
Yeah. Brandon was severely intoxicated and had already had a scuffle with a guy by the name of Jeremy Andrews for, quote, no apparent reason.
They scuffling.
Jeremy Andrews testified that he also observed Brandon making shooting motions at the Yates brothers. Freddie admitted that he shared a line of methamphetamine with Ronald Yates at some point before he and Carrie went back to their house at around 4 a.m. So, that left Brandon Hutchinson, Michael Salazar, and the Yates brothers as the only partygoers in the garage, as everyone else had already gone home.
Right, yeah.
According to testimony, Brandon ran into the Lopez's house about 20 minutes later and began banging on the bedroom door, exclaiming that something bad had happened. Michael was on the front porch calling out for Freddie to come outside. And when Freddie went outside, he saw Michael holding a .25 caliber revolver. Michael admitted he had shot someone, and when Freddie entered the garage, he saw the Yates brothers lying on the floor. This is where it's tricky. Because if you remember, Brandon said that after Michael shot them, Michael picked up a screwdriver and started stabbing Ronald. But according to Freddie's testimony, Michael claimed that Brian tried to stab him with a screwdriver, which is why he shot at them.
Okay.
Specifically, he said he hit Brian, and then Ronald stood up to come at him. And so he shot Ronald too. No one and nobody else, there's no mention of Michael picking up a screwdriver and stabbing anybody.
Just in Brandon's
account in his 2019 interview. So that's kind of why I emphasize, it's all these years. It's all these years later, and yeah. Okay. Back to the court records. They state that Brandon insisted that no one call an ambulance because they were already dead. It's true that at least Brian probably appeared dead. Yeah. Because he really wasn't moving or doing much of anything.
Yeah.
Brandon and Michael then placed Ronald in the trunk of Freddie's Honda Accord and then put Brian on top of him. At Freddie's instruction, Michael went back into the house and grabbed a .22 caliber handgun before they took off in the car with Brandon driving. They only drove about 10 to 15 minutes before they stopped. So they didn't make it very far.
Yeah, that's not far at all.
Brandon then grabbed the .22 and stated, quote, "We gotta kill them."
But I thought they were already dead, Brandon.
Yeah. Then he and Michael got out and walked to the back of the car. So that's another thing that's different.
Yeah, he's saying, okay.
I mean, obviously they're going to say, it's a he said situation as to, what the implications are on who decided that they needed to die. That's to be expected. But there's also slight differences in the stories of, Brandon says, oh, I just got out of the car and I went back and shot them. all these years later.
Right.
But Freddie's testimony was that Brandon and Michael both got out of the car, walked to the back of the car.
Right.
Freddie stayed in the car. And then Brandon and Michael, they opened the trunk. They pulled the top of the first brother out, just out of the trunk. So, like, their head is sort of hanging out of the trunk. Michael said that he stood leaning against the car as Brandon shot him twice in the head. And then they took him out of the trunk completely, threw him to the side of the road, and repeated the process with the second brother. Freddie testified that he didn't see anything at that point, that he heard several gunshots, and then Brandon and Michael got back in the car with the gun still being held by Brandon.
Okay.
They then drove to a nearby creek where Freddie threw the bullet casings in the water, and Brandon buried both the 22 and the 25 caliber guns wrapped in his t-shirt.
Okay.
Brandon then drove them to a friend's home and pleaded with the friend to let them in and allow him to take a shower because he had blood on one of his hands. I don't know how you got out of all of that with just blood on one of your hands.
Also, fam, if anybody shows up to your house and is like, please let me shower, I got blood on me, don't let them shower there. For the love of God, call the police.
Yeah. The three men then returned to Freddie's house where Brandon and Michael picked up the Yates brothers' car and drove it to somebody's girlfriend's house. I think Michael Salazar. I think Michael Salazar might have had multiple girlfriends.
Okay.
He seemed to have had a girlfriend in Missouri, a girlfriend in Arizona, and possibly a girlfriend in California. Okay. So
he got hosed.
His Missouri, his Missouri girlfriend then gave them a ride to, when I say them, just Brandon and Michael. Freddie stayed back because I think Freddie thought he was home free. Like, I didn't do this. I didn't shoot anybody. Even though it was his house and his car. I don't know that for sure, but it seems that the actions imply that.
Right.
Okay. So, anywho, Michael's Missouri girlfriend gave him and Brandon a ride to the bus station where they bought 2 tickets to Yuma, Arizona, where another girlfriend of Michael's lived.
Okay.
And as I said earlier from the sheriff's interview, the bodies of the Yates brothers were found in the road in the early morning, and they quickly determined that both men had been shot multiple times and most likely in like an execution fashion. Right. They could tell, they pretty much established, it looks like they were shot, disabled, if you will, and then brought out here and basically executed. And besides the dentures that I mentioned, they also found a piece of carpet that was later determined to have come from the trunk of Freddie's car. These dudes were not careful at all about any of the evidence. The autopsies of the bodies showed that both men had been shot at point-blank range with a 25 caliber gun. The bullet that hit Ronald lodged in his spine, effectively paralyzing him from the waist down.
Okay.
So that's why he was like crawling, dragging himself across the floor. Brian had been hit twice. One was a minor wound to the chest and the other a more damaging one to the stomach. However, the medical evidence confirmed that both men would have still been alive at that point. And that it was the final shots to the heads with the 22 that killed them. Despite fleeing, Brandon and Michael were arrested in California within days. Interesting to me, though, that Brandon's appeal in the statement of fact just says that they were apprehended. But Michael's appeal states that he turned himself in. So I don't know if Brandon turned himself in or if Michael turned himself in and then they somehow were able to track down Brandon.
Yeah, he was like, I'm here, but Brandon's in the...
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't find
right.
anything that said one way or the other. Not shocking. Brandon was found guilty and received the death penalty.
Okay.
Michael's trial took place second, and he was also found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
All right.
Then, despite making a deal with the state, Freddie was still facing at least 30 years. Like, his deal was basically 30 to 40 years. And then all of that changed when Freddie's family won $34 million in the California lottery.
Those bastards? What?
They went on to hire top-notch defense attorney
of course.
Dee Wampler out of Springfield, Missouri.
Wampler.
Wampler.
That's a fun word.
Yes.
Everybody say Wampler.
Attorney Wampler negotiated a better deal for Freddie, lowering his sentence to 10 years for each victim.
Okay, which means he'll probably serve 5 each. Is he serving them concurrently or consecutively?
Just wait. This deal was agreed to only after Freddie settled a wrongful death suit brought against him by the Yates family, wherein he started a trust fund of $230,000 for the children of Brian Yates, and they in turn requested that the criminal court only sentence him to 10 years for each of their loved ones' deaths, right? Just as I said.
Right.
Now, I'm having difficulty with this because everywhere I've read, I swear to you, everything says that they requested 10 years for each victim, but it also says that the court only sentenced Freddie to a total of 10 years. So I think what it is that it was 10 years.
Consecutively.
No, concurrently.
Oh, concurrently.
Madness.
So he just...
Yeah. Now, Gary Yates, Ronald and Brian's brother, claims that he had no idea that Freddie would be given a reduced sentence for giving the money to his niece and nephew. And he doesn't think that it's right someone could buy their way out of a punishment for such a horrific crime.
Well, I have some news for you, buddy. This is the United States of America, and you can buy yourself out of anything.
Yes. He said he feels that all 3 men should have received the death penalty, as he believes they are all equally guilty, though they, obviously are responsible for different parts to the crime. And Freddie, regardless of what Gary thinks, Freddie ended up serving only 8 years of his sentence. And I was going to
ask how many years out of the 10 he actually served.
He did serve 8. And I have no idea what happened to him after that. I cannot find him. I searched and searched. Freddie Lopez is an extremely common name, especially in California.
Right.
Like you put because I checked like Freddie Lopez, Missouri, because Carrie Lopez, Brandon's cousin, did an interview in the show as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she referred to herself as his ex-wife. So I was like, okay, maybe he left Missouri and went back to California. I searched there. I think I even did a search in Arizona, but it's just such a common name that it's hard to tell if.
Well, that's going to be impossible to find. And also, like, he probably changed his name.
His family won $34 million.
He wiped it.
Probably.
Yeah, they probably were like
a whole new identity.
You have now been witness protection programmed.
Basically.
Or killer protection programmed. Like,
oh, God.
Totally just cleared it for him.
But I did like inmate search because I was like, well, who knows? Just because you have money now doesn't mean that you aren't still out there committing crimes. Like maybe you're back in jail for something else.
Yeah, you couldn't. Yeah.
Nope.
Nothing.
Couldn't find him. So Michael Salazar is still serving his life sentence without parole. He, of course, appealed, but the courts have always affirmed his sentencing. And I don't know how you're going to feel about the ending for Brandon.
Yeah, I have questions. So, okay.
Do you want to ask your questions before
I'm just trying to figure out why all of a sudden in 2019 he's doing interviews with TV shows when he had nothing else to say before then. And why his story...
I'm so glad you said that.
His story is so different than everybody else's. And of course, his makes him look a little bit better. But it doesn't because his
wife,
he
admits to it.
Right. But then his wife also
thought he was
innocent.
So here's the thing. So let's talk about that first.
Okay.
We'll talk about that first. His wife and him didn't make it very long. They were only married 3 or 4 years, I think, before she divorced him. Because, of course, once he was convicted and life just doesn't go. I mean,
Well, and what are you going to... You can't sit around and wait on him to be put to death. He's... I mean, he's on death row at that point. That sounded horrible. That's not what I mean. I just mean, if they weren't going to make it to begin with.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And they had a toxic relationship to begin with.
Yes.
They're not... nobody expected it to last, I don't think.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would blame her for going, okay, I signed up, but now not this.
Not this.
Here's the part that disturbed me. Okay, so she did an interview with this show, regardless of the fact that they got divorced back in 2001.
Okay.
She seems like a really sweet lady.
Right.
He had never talked about any of this, admitted. He maintained, I don't know that he maintained that he was innocent with her. He just did not talk about it. Okay. Or probably in the beginning, he told her he was innocent. And then he just didn't talk about it. So then she just assumed that's how it is. Right. So she had to find out on this TV show.
In the middle of her interview?
Yep. The producers played his interview to her.
And I'm sure that did they know that she didn't know, or did they?
Yeah. I mean, because she said, I supported him and it's just a shame. And this is all just, yeah. And
you know what? Shame on them for doing that and on camera. I'm sure they definitely edited it because it was only showed her crying, for one little part. She just said, I wish that he hadn't have done that. I wish that he had just let somebody call an ambulance. I wish that he had done the right thing. And oh no, the producers of that show should have pulled her into a room and said,
I don't maybe the whole thing was staged.
Maybe.
But her crying looked genuine to me.
Right. If it wasn't staged.
And we all know.
You shouldn't have done that to somebody.
And we all know from the Jenny Jones show that producers of these shows they don't care. Always they want the reaction. So yeah, because it makes for good TV, right? So,
I mean, yeah, and I watch it, I eat it up, but
you're part of the problem.
I am. I love reality TV, although I like the reality TV shows that aren't really reality.
Yeah.
I
do know. I do know that you like those. So I'll finish out how things ended for Brandon, and then you'll probably be like most of us and speculate on why it is he all of a sudden talked. So Brandon appealed as well. And eventually the Missouri State Supreme Court ruled that Brandon deserved another sentencing hearing due to ineffective counsel.
Okay.
They specifically agreed that his defense attorneys should have presented evidence of his, quote, impaired intellectual functioning. And apparently what they meant by that, because I was like, wait, is there
are you just calling him dumb?
I was like, what do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
So a little further into the opinion, it appears that what they meant by that was probably his long history of mental health problems, trauma from sexual abuse, and addiction issues. They just feel like basically it wouldn't have changed that he was convicted, but it would have been evidence that you can present to the jury when deciding, does he get the death penalty or does he not get the death penalty, right? So the court was not impressed that Brandon's trial attorneys had no previous experience with capital case and had spent the bulk of their efforts preparing for the trial and not the sentencing part.
Okay.
So that's what made them decide, no, we're not going to overturn your conviction, but we will allow you another sentencing hearing.
Okay. I think that's like really fair.
Part of Brandon's petition also asked that the actual conviction be overturned because there were allegations that the prosecution had not disclosed the plea agreement that they had made with Freddie during the trial. Like,
Why?
they didn't disclose that.
Why would it matter?
I don't know what the rules are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I think, like, I don't know what the rules are on that. So seriously, if we have any listeners that know, or I can look it up, I can do some research, but I'm not sure what and it might vary from state to state.
Right.
But in any case, the court denied that part, as I said.
Well, because I don't see how it's going to make a difference in anything anyway. Like, in result.
I think they probably would have fought back. I think his attorneys helping him through the appellate process felt that if the trial attorney had known that was the deal that Freddie got, and he's testifying against their client,
right,
they probably would have pushed back.
Fair.
Trying to get his testimony thrown out because he was technically involved in the crime. And
yeah, but that's not how it works. I don't
know. So upon resentencing, Brandon's death sentence was overturned and he was given life without parole.
Okay.
However, he didn't stay long, though. Just 10 days after his interview with the I Am a Killer producers, he was diagnosed with liver and stomach cancer. And on November 2nd, 2019, he died at just 44 years old.
Oh, so this was kind of a deathbed thing.
That's what a lot of people think. Yes.
But it still doesn't really, like, match. So, is it that he's just misremembering? Is he deliberately trying to make it seem like...
He seemed really genuine in his interview.
Like, this is really what he thinks happened.
I think it is. I think that he was just... I've known plenty of people that have addiction issues, and very few of them have good memories.
Right.
Like, most of the time...
Right. I don't know.
You don't remember stuff.
I mean, listen, that's tricky, but...
Like, he talked about Michael Salazar like he was a good... I mean, he literally says he's a good guy. He just got mixed up with the wrong people, too.
Yeah.
And he says, the only person I have beef with, so to speak, is Freddie, because Freddie got off the hook. He played a part in this, and he got off easy just because he won a bunch of money.
Yeah. And that's true. Can't fault him for feeling that way.
Yeah. So.
Dang. And Freddie's just out there.
Freddie's out there somewhere, I guess.
Not named Freddie, though.
Possibly not.
Probably named Paul.
I don't think he would pass for Paul, but I don't know. Yeah. It's wild.
Well,
there you are.
There we have it.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year. You get a case we don't really know what happened in.
Don't go snorting lines of methamphetamines. Yeah.
I know. I love that they shared a line of meth and then bang, bang.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, like, how it actually went down. We know the result. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, that left me unsatisfied.
I'm sorry. I was in too deep by the time I realized, like, oh, this isn't going to end well.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Some cases are just like that.
But great job bringing it to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And,
well,
we will see you guys next year.
That was terrible.
That was horrible.
If you made it this far,
yes,
give us an ambulance emoji on one of our socials.
Because that's what they should have done.
Because that's definitely what they should have done. They should have just sucked it up.
Right.
And dealt with the consequences of shooting somebody, but not killing them.
Yeah. You know, a battery charge is different. Or attempted murder is different than murder.
Yes.
So, friends, learn your lesson. Call an ambulance. That's all I got for you.
Yeah. Same. All right. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Woo!
Stay safe.
Stay safe. Drive safe. Stay off the roads. Welcome to 2024. More crime. More funnies. More collabs.
Hopefully.
Haven't planned any, but hopefully.
Yeah. All right. Till next time.
Till next year. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.